All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wonderful Decisions Lunch and Learn today. Sorry, we're a little bit late to get started. It looks like we've got, I can pull up my Zoom chat. So we've got just a few people here.
Hey, Ethan, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I hear you just fine.
Would it be possible for me to share my screen? I think that might be the easiest way to show you what's going on.
Yeah, sure thing. So let's see. Go ahead and stop my share. All right, so it looks like you've been bumped up to panelists. You should have the option now.
All right, I got it here. Okay, you able to see my form okay?
Yep, I'm looking at a furlough request.
Yep. All right. So I have a group of tabs here at the top. I have some scenarios where, depending on what the user selects, some tabs are going to hide or show. So make that selection here. So you can see I changed the selection, and now I get this travel tab up here. But you can see that it is not in line with the other tabs. I hover on it, it kind of comes down a little bit. But when I go off of it, you can see it still kind of goes up to the top of the screen there. And I'm seeing that on tabs in the middle of the list, at the end of the list. Just didn't know if this was something I'm doing or a known issue.
That's interesting. So this is tied to like a visibility rule or
Yes.
Okay.
An active form flow. Yep. That
Gotcha.
shows it. So I can turn it off, right? And everything comes back. What's there to start with looks fine. But when I add one, it gets that that weird alignment.
That's interesting. Can we look at this form just in the studio itself?
Sure.
Let's see if I can
have it here. If you want to take control, that's fine.
So showing inline right there. So let's see. So we're in this tab container right now, or can we click into that?
Yeah.
It's interesting. So one thing I'm going to try to do here, see if I can quickly recreate this. It may take me just a sec.
Sure.
I may have one already ready. One tab testing. Just looking at that initially, that seems like a bug to me. If we don't have any additional configuration on it, I don't see why that would appear, especially if it appears, in line like we're looking at it in the studio right now.
Yep.
So let's see. Layout. And can I ask, what version of Decisions are you running currently?
We're on 8.3.2.
8.3.2.
Yes, 8.3.2.
So mark that down. And then can we look at the active form flow as well?
Yeah.
Containers to show multiple controls.
I don't know what I have going on.
So I'm going to add another tab on mine.
Not sure what's doing, but I can get them later.
Tab C testing.
Yep, and I'm just showing the tab container underscore travel.
Yep, that's perfect. Okay, so let's see. I had a form ready to go, but unfortunately I didn't have an active form flow ready. So now I've got to do some building.
Okay.
One. Let's see. Let's do some. So show control. Container, so it's perfect. And then we'll hide control if that is false. Testing. All right, so if Jackbox is true, show the control, if that will hide it. Run it startup. Okay. Should be all there is to it. Okay, so can we jump back to the forum? It's looking like this is working as expected here.
Okay.
I wonder if, do we have any like sizing that we've done? Maybe different. Any custom CSS that we're using
Nope.
possibly?
No.
Okay.
No.
Interesting. So if we click into that tab container again, I wonder if there's any. So I jump out of this. Jump into my form now. So try to match this as closely as possible here. Headers placement. At the top. Type transparent. Visible view. Not seeing too much that should be different here.
Okay.
So one thing I might recommend is maybe better to just throw this into a support ticket.
Okay.
And that would allow us, then we could get the project and maybe do some compare and contrast here as to what's different.
Okay.
Maybe just dig into some configuration. Is that something you'd like to handle, or I'd be more than happy
Yeah.
to submit one?
No, I'll submit it. That'll be great.
Okay, I appreciate you.
Thanks, Ethan.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. See ya.
All right, so it looks like we got a couple questions in here. Next one, can you point me to the best documentation to explain the differences between a flow execution extension and a case entity and the best uses for each? Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up my screen once again. All right, so I just jumped onto the documentation page. So if you jump in here, we've got a tab just for data structures. We've got starting with data structures. We've got all sorts of creation for data structures and the tons of different ways that we can configure these. So let's see. So I think the first thing that we want to look at is about data structures. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to go ahead and post this one. in the chat first. So this just goes over the basics about data structures, how they're used in decisions, when to use a data structure. So this will walk through, during your planning stage, consider the following questions. Here are the things that you need to know. And then this gives you just kind of a basic overview, just a short table saying this is a case entity, unstructured data in a repeatable process with variable outcomes. And it gives you an example for each too. And then we've got another page here for the differences between data structures. And this one kind of dives in and gives this really informative image. This was something that I went through looking at my training when I was first just trying to kind of wrap my head around data structures, because this was probably my most difficult subject, was trying to understand the different data structures and the things that they do and why I would use, say, a flow execution extension over a case entity, or, all sorts of different questions that I kind of had. And this definitely gave me sort of a visualization. So we've got stuff like a case entity and a flow execution extension. You've got access to entity framework, you've got access to folder behavior and process tracking by default. Whereas something like just a simple database structure, you can save things to the database, you'll have access to entity framework. You can create a configuration folder. It's not available by default, but you can create one. But then a database structure isn't going to have access to, say, something like process tracking. So you're not going to be able to store data such as a purchase request. Is that something you'd want to create? You wouldn't be able to do that with a database structure. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this in the chat as well. And then if we dig even further, flow execution extension and case entity. So this will dive into actually creating a flow execution extension. And so it gives you just kind of a quick summary saying, hey, this is what this can do. It's high complexity, high performance impact, but it does save to the database, have a configuration folder, entity framework, folder behavior, and you can use process tracking with this. And so this will walk you through another example of creating one and then using it within a process. So I'll drop that in the chat.
So I guess my issue is there must be something I'm not understanding, because so far they seem identical to me. I don't know why I would use one and not the other. Those two, I understand that there's differences between other, data structures. It's just those two specific ones. I don't understand why I would use one and not the other.
So typically, my recommendation, you can kind of use these interchangeably. There's not a ton of processes where I can definitively say one will absolutely not work and the other one will. They can typically, you can make them work in a lot of situations. A lot of times we kind of recommend, this is looking at a case entity right now. A lot of times we recommend something like a case entity for something that's going to bounce around between states. So it's not going to go straight from start to finish. Say something like, let me try to think of a good example here, and I might be able to use one of the docs I just looked at.
So the processes that we're doing tend to have a lot of approvals, and they might be sent back for revision. So I've been leaning towards case entity, but I didn't understand enough about flow execution extension to say if that was a viable choice or not.
I'd say, just listening to that very briefly, I would say flow execution extension might be a little bit better. But I mean, a case entity, so this is the example that I was looking for. So something like a patient going to a doctor and they've got information that they need, and let's say they're trying to pick up like a prescription or something, and we say they want to get the prescription and they're going through this process of getting it approved by the doctor and then going to pick it up, and say something happens in the pickup process and they need additional approval from the doctor. And this is obviously a very brief explanation. We can then move that process pretty much right back to approval from the doctor, and then kick off the associated flows, the associated processes that go with that. Whereas a flow execution extension, we're going to kind of have to build logic around looping back through that to repeat the same process. But then the flow execution extension has some more benefits when it comes to just actually going from start to finish, say an approval process, kicking different flows off and sending different emails and assigning different things to different users. I hope that makes sense. I'm kind of walking through the
And I
different
think
scenarios in my head.
some of the details that I have in my head, I think I still would stick with case entity.
Yeah, and like I said, like neither one of them is definitively better in a like super specific scenario than the other. They're fairly interchangeable in how you apply them to your processes. It's just some things can give very slight benefits that others can't.
Okay. All right, that does help to know that they are pretty much interchangeable, because that's what I was coming up with.
Yeah, pretty much. And like I said, like this graph kind of shows like the big, I guess, gosh, I can't think of the word. The big options that you can use and configurations that you can use. And I mean, you can see with both of them, you have pretty much every feature that you can imagine available to you, no matter which one you choose to use.
That's what I needed. Thank you.
Absolutely. Alrighty. So let's see. Can you explain the benefits using entities and external entities rather than just defining a custom data source and creating our own flows? Are we able to use these in decisions, reports, analytics, flows, give us some benefits automatically? Is this what you generally recommend from building data sources from external REST APIs? Alrighty. So since I'm already on the documentation site, I can go ahead and jump over here.
Hi, yeah, this is Neil. This was my question, or one of the couple I submitted here. We're just kind of getting started. We were using some of just the custom data sources. We're trying to just kind of connect to an external API, and but then make that available so I can browse the data, I can update the data, that kind of thing. And when I tried creating an external entity, it seemed to work pretty well. It created the fetch all and delete and those types of things automatically. But then we weren't able to kind of specify a location. That was sort of my follow-up question. But we just had a lot of flexibility with the data, with the custom data source. But at the same time, I assume I'm losing some capabilities, and I just don't really understand what those are. Is there ways that if I have the entity that I can plug that data source into a report, or can you just kind of elaborate on a little bit? I read some of the documentation; it just wasn't very clear.
So let me kind of walk through here. It's been a while since I messed with external entities, so I'm gonna have to refresh myself as well here.
Or if there's something else you would recommend. I mean, basically, we're using a couple third-party products that have an API where we can retrieve data, update data, and we're trying to, and I'm putting those into a workflow. But we're just looking for the best solution on how to do that.
So let's see. And is this something, I don't know, would you mind sharing and just kind of walking us through like what you got set up now? If not, I can totally understand. I don't want to put you on the spot like that.
No, that's fine. I'm happy to. So we just created the custom data, what is it? Custom, I don't see it here. What is it? Developer.
Jump off here.
Yeah, we were just using the. Can you bring up that chart again that you had?
Yeah, sure thing.
Yeah. Where was the one that showed the features and the X's and the check marks that you were just showing?
Around here. There we go.
Yeah. So we were using the defined data structure, but everything we had to define. So if we wanted to create a retrieve data that went to our, application, or it's our blockchain application. we would create a workflow that said, so we created our own data source that had the different fields that we wanted and data types and things. Then I would create a flow that would say like, okay, retrieve, retrieve contract. And that would, I'd execute some API inside the flow and it would come back with that data object. So that was great. That was fine. And that's been working for us, but I assume there are some benefits, especially based on this table you're showing here, to using other data types than rather having to define it ourselves in each case. And so we were looking at, I was looking at the external entity, and I'm just trying, and I saw where I could use some of those entities, but it wasn't really, I didn't quite understand what the benefits were of the entities themselves.
Let's see. Let me go ahead and pull this back up here. I believe one of the benefits of using something like an external entity is it is a little bit easier on performance. But let me double check here. Let's see if I can. Fortunately, I don't have a ton of experience using them. Some of this stuff, our professional services team definitely has a bit more understanding about these.
Okay.
So let's
Yeah,
see.
I can put in a support ticket, on some of this. That's fine.
Yeah, and I mean, if that works for you, I'd be happy to kind of check in here and I can send out a question to our general support chat that we have.
Sure. Yeah, I will do that.
Alrighty, and I appreciate the question. So let's see, let's hop into next one here. Looks like you had another question here that wasn't quite related.
Yeah, around the SDK.
Yeah, so if you want, so using SAS service, trying to create an extension through the SDK, when you get a Windows desktop, install decisions just to do development, somehow develop against a rote decision service, deploy the extension, we deploy it without taking down decisions. So typically doing any sort of software development, like a lot of times we have customers that come in and they like to create their own modules and stuff.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, we normally recommend having a local install of decisions to test against, but you can use something like a remote decision service. You would need access because I believe you'll pretty much need to stop and restart the services if you're gonna make any changes, like to upload a new version of the module or something. You will need to do a restart just so the service can catch those changes and apply them. So
Okay.
that's why we typically recommend having just like a local install of decisions, and you can install decisions locally and you wouldn't need a license just to do some basic stuff like that.
Okay.
So you wouldn't be limited by not having a license just on a local install to do some SDK work.
Got it. Okay. And then, so for the regular environment, how do we do those upgrades if it's the SaaS? Can we restart decisions just from the console, or like through the API? How can we kind of do, launch versions of our module that we're building if it requires a restart and we don't have the back end infrastructure, obviously?
So typically, let's see, I believe there might be the way we can do a flow to do this. Let me pull up another tab here and take a little look. So you're saying if we don't have any access to like the box of the servers installed on?
Well, we won't have that. Yeah. I mean, if it's a SaaS version, we're not going to have that, right? So.
Let's see. So let's see. Yeah, so that's something, may not be a bad idea to submit a support ticket just to have a follow-up, but
Okay.
from my basic understanding here, I think we would need access to the box. Because typically, like if we're going to upload a custom module to decisions, that's something that we do through the file system. So there's a folder within the decision services. I can actually pull that up here on my local install. If we jump in, program files, decisions, decision server, it should be under
Yeah, and this is
modules.
what we were doing, like when we were just starting out, which we are. But we were kind of just like we don't have. I mean, we're just using the SaaS version, so I don't have access to this in the actual environment, right? Obviously, so
Yeah, so this is more than likely something we'd have to find a way to get access to, unless there's another way that I'm just personally not aware of.
okay,
But we can definitely look into that using a
Okay.
support ticket.
okay. All right, thanks for your help.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So it's looking like we don't have any additional questions. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming out and hopping on the Lunch and Learn. I'm glad you were able to come out and ask some questions, and for the answers that we couldn't get here, hopefully we can get those soon. We'll be happy to help you there. All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.